Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Torrence, and in today's video we're doing part 3 in the last video of this week. I've been showing off my eyeshadow collection by different brands this week. The first video was Pat McGrath. The second video was for Juvia's Place. So for this one I chose to go with Anastasia Beverly Hills just because this is one where not only it can be found in a store that carries high-end things like Sephora, but can also be found in a store that sells drugstore items such as Ulta. And ABH fits that because even when they go on sale, they're usually not as affordable as one, and the most expensive products still don't compare to the price of many of the high-end brands from Pat McGrath. And so I wanted to go ahead and do this because I believe I've collected every palette they've released since the Makeup by Mario palette. I'm someone who didn't catch on to Anastasia Beverly Hills in the beginning because when I first started makeup, I didn't care for eyeshadow. Blush was my way of showing off color because I always wore a nude lip or a glossy lip. But we've done enough talking. I want to go ahead, show you off my entire collection. So just like with those two previous videos, you can see exactly what I have, and you can leave a comment down below in the comment section letting me know which palette you want a tutorial on next, because whichever palette gets the most comments will be the one that I do a tutorial on. And I want to start things off, although I don't believe you can no longer get this palette, it is probably the most sentimental to me out of them all. It may sound weird for many people to say, but usually if I have a wedding or a funeral to go to, more than likely this is the palette I'm going to reach for. I'm not sure how it ever even got that title, but somehow, some way, I just started to notice this was the palette I wore for both events. And so I want to show you this one here because I almost did not even grab this palette here just because I figured it was rather on the small and simple side, but I got it just because of the hype. And now that I do have it, I am so happy I do. As someone who genuinely was looking for more colorful eyeshadow palettes, this neutral palette just didn't catch my eye at first, but now every time I see it, my heart just flutters. And to me, it is still crazy to think that ABH has not released all of these shades as singles yet. But this color story here is so simple, so beautiful, and I am just so excited that I have it. How many times am I going to say so in one video? Y'all count and let me know. Next up is probably their most infamous palette and the one I wear the least. Modern Renaissance. Comes with this velvet packaging here, and as you can see, I still have the old school emblem here. They don't even print this right here on the front of their packages anymore. But this is the palette that started my love for ABH. Although I had heard many things about their formula, it wasn't until I actually tried it that I realized this is why everybody likes you all. These are just stellar eyeshadows, but as someone who just really does not care for orange shades that much, you can just see why this orange tone neutral palette, she cute and all, but yeah. I just have it just because it's a collector's item. I don't see me even trying to repurchase this palette here. Now the next palette, honey, the makeup world might have took it and said, you know what, we don't want it, get rid of it. But the subculture, this was the palette that let me know, honey, you got this, because I was loving it. And I was hurt because not only did Alyssa Ashley not like this palette, but Raw Beauty Christy didn't like it either. And I'm like, but I love this palette, honey. The color story is what drew me in. These greens here, you couldn't tell me nothing about this color story. But then you found out later on, this was not their typical formula. This was actually a pressed pigment palette and not an eyeshadow palette, and that's why people were having issues with it. I'm someone who didn't have issues with pigments because I used to love MAC and Bare Minerals, so I was comfortable with this. But they didn't like it. They drugged this palette for filth. It went on sale. Nobody wanted it, honey. And then what they did was they took the feedback and they told everybody, okay, we hear y'all, we got y'all, we're gonna switch it up and make it an eyeshadow formula. And then they did. But by the time they had done that, the damage was already there, no one cared. And so I have it here, like I can still get plastic on it. I have the eyeshadow palette formula here just because I wanted to grab it before it was discontinued. But as you can see, I've never had to use it because I have the pigment one and that one was discontinued and I absolutely love it. So honestly, I really wanted to go ahead and do a comparison video, but considering the fact this is the only version you would be able to buy, I figured there was no point. But if you all want to see that video, just go ahead and leave a comment below. This grungy green look here, I guess it was just too much for the neutral lover, but I got them both. I'm happy to have them both. Plan on never getting rid of both. Next up, ABH tried to once again give us something a little different, spice things up for us, show us a little something. Makeup World just kicked them down. They wasn't having it. The Prism palette. I believe they've already even thoroughly discontinued this. You can't even get it on the website anymore. And this is the one I'm hurt I didn't get a backup of because every time I think of using it, I think of running out, but we're gonna start using this a lot more often. Black packaging, gold accents. Oh, come on, honey. How could you not like this? And then look at these shades. Dark jewel tones, a matte black, honey. That green, that purple. You know this color story speaks to me. But the rest of the world just wasn't having it. They weren't loving it. And I really wish they would. At least ABH, bring these back as singles. I think we should just talk to the government or something, because every time ABH releases a palette, I need all of those shades as singles when you discontinue things. Because that ain't right for you to let us fall in love with it and snatch it back. Although Modern Renaissance may be considered their best-selling palette, I think across the board, if you were to ask anyone, what is the one ABH palette you can give as a gift and you know it's gonna go over well? Soft Glam, honey. This is the palette Modern Renaissance, in my opinion, wish it could be. Now let me tell you, she's warm neutral, but to me, she leans a little orange, she leans a little pink, she leans a little mauve, and so it just gives you what it calls the Soft Glam palette. And if you were to just take out that matte black to me, this would truly be a thorough Soft Glam. But because it has that black, it allows you to take this palette to deeper places. It gives you more dimension. And it's just the beautiful, neutral, everyday palette that I think everyone should have in their collection. If out of all of these palettes, I can only recommend one for the everyday use, I think this will probably be the one. Next up was a fan favorite, but for me, the shimmers were absolutely stunning. Those mattes on my complexion, they didn't offer me enough. And the packaging led me to believe that I was gonna get a little bit more. Once again, this is one of those palettes where if you have a much more fair skin tone, you'll love it. But I think the deeper your melanin goes, the less likely you are to like this palette. And that is the Norvina. Once again, these shimmers are absolutely stunning, but I find myself dipping into other palettes to get a deeper crease because I have hooded eyes. Whenever I want to go for a more purpley look, I'm not trying to go soft and subtle. I personally wish they had darker crease shades, but considering this is called the Norvina palette and this has to be colors that she likes and enjoys and will look flattering on her skin tone, I have no regrets for this palette. And this is what the shades look like. Once again, the formula is there, the color story is nice, but just for my personal skin tone, I just would like a few more deeper shades to put into my crease. Last holiday, they put out another palette. Everybody was trying to sleep on it, didn't nobody want it. All y'all, what I'm gonna do with that? Look at that packaging. Now look. Everybody is doing their rendition of the Sultry palette, a cool tone neutral palette. And y'all done missed out on the best one, honey. Y'all let this glitter packaging hold y'all back. And I'll admit, this may not have the world's greatest glitter holding these on here, but after about 2 or 3 uses, you no longer get that fall off anywhere, which once again, I can understand you shouldn't have to go through it at all. This went on sale and y'all still didn't grab it. Honey, what? Are you kidding me? Look at those shades, honey. And then y'all, what we gonna do with that random pop of peachy corally color? Ignore them, girl. If you don't like them, ignore them. But look at the rest of that cool neutral palette, honey. Look at the variety. I am so glad I did not let nobody talk me out of this palette because I don't need another cool neutral palette. This has it all. The only thing I would probably want just for myself is a few more matte shades, because when I use it on different people, different skin tones may have, different likings, but you got your bright silver, you got your browns, you got your taupes. It's like, this one needs to be re-released, because I promise you, if they try it again, I think it'll get much more hype than it did the first time. Since cool neutrals are back up on the trend, she was ahead of her time, and those of you who missed it, y'all missed out. Next up, which to me had the prettiest of the packaging just because they skipped out on that velvety packaging here, and this one here, it's just, oh my. It just looks like I'm ready to grab me a hat, grab me a boat, and just go out here into waters. The Riviera palette, look at this. The thing is, just looking at the outside packaging, I'm automatically expecting these colors, a blue, a white, a gold, and things that just makes you think of being out at the sea. But somehow you got inside and that is not what they gave us. I personally have no regrets about it. You can see why this palette here shocked a lot of people. It is very colorful, very vibrant, but many of the matte shades don't have a companion shimmer to go with it. So a lot of times this was more of a peachy neutrally matte shades with a pop of something on the top, regardless which one you used. And so this was not the most cohesive palette, and it didn't sell the absolute best, and I can understand why. I'm just glad that I have it because I don't mind mixing different palettes up to create a full look. But of all ABH palettes, I think this is one where I can sit back and say, I understood why it didn't go where it could have gone. Speaking of bold, bright, colorful, this palette here took nobody by shock because once we heard who it was going to be with, we knew to expect the most. And that was the Alyssa Edwards palette. Alyssa Edwards was a star on the RuPaul's Drag Race, and when you hear drag queen, you already know. The soft, the subtles, the barely theirs is not what we're coming for. And so to get these type of colors, honey, you knew exactly what you signed up for, and that's why we loved it. The thing is, for ABH to be much more of a neutral brand, although many people enjoyed watching Alyssa Edwards do such looks, the general fan base for ABH was not someone that enjoyed these type of colors. So I think this was the perfect palette to bring new customers into the brand and let them know about the formula, but the average customer didn't want to have it. I grabbed it and I have an absolutely stunning pink and purple look that I have on social media. I'll try to tag that underneath this video, but I've never done a tutorial with it, so if you want to see that one, just go ahead and leave the comment for this palette. Every brand got an underrated palette. And although I truly think, just based off the color story alone, Sultry palette to me was given the time to shine, but just didn't. This one was just the opposite. It shined, but it was not given the time to go ahead and take it to the next level and be palette of the year like it should have been. The Jackie Aina palette. I have a tutorial on my channel using this palette. I'll make sure I leave it linked above. But when I tell you, I like it so much, I got 2 of them. One I ain't never used, and one I used all the time. And not only did I like it so much to use it all the time, I depotted and rearranged the colors, honey. So this color story that you see here is not the original arrangement. Once again, I've already done a video of this palette, but when you see, you can go completely neutral, you can go completely colorful. I have my greens, I have the fan favorites of purples. It's like, what can this palette not do besides give me a black smoky eye? The only thing I need for this palette is a matte black and it'll be at perfection. But this palette dropped, and immediately after another palette dropped from the brand. So this palette really didn't even have the time to get the PR, the people to go out and show it off and do everything they wanted to with it. But to me, grab this one. She's limited edition and she will sell out probably the fastest. I would say if you don't have anything from ABH, limited edition, this one. Full-time soft glam. But you can grab soft glam from anybody that sells ABH any time of the year. When she's gone, and you're gonna wish she was like me and either had a backup or at least had one. So go get you one. Right behind the Jackie Aina palette was another beautiful palette that was not quite given the time it needed to shine, and that one is the Carly Bible palette. I remember her first two palettes with BH Cosmetics. I gave those away as Mother Day gifts one year. They were so neutral, so versatile that I thought everyone deserved to have it. I ended up dropping and shattering mine and couldn't replace it. So when she dropped this palette, I had to have it. And for me, this just screams Carly. I mean, soft, neutral, matte shades. She likes a really soft, blown out look with all of these vibrant shades on the lid. As you can see, these aren't the most darkest jewel tone colors like something I would like, but because she has a much lighter skin tone, I can understand why she would like more neutral to more pastel-y, you know, purples and things like that. Honestly, this is just like the Norvina palette. The shimmers are stunning, the colors are beautiful, but because I have a darker skin tone, I just like more darker colors in the crease. But just bringing in one or two matte shades to deepen up your crease, this palette won't let you down. And truth be told, out of all of the shimmer shades in all of these palettes, this one may have the most unique shades because none of them are just straight flat one color. There are more duochrome colors or colors that have a slight, you know, different hue to them. They may not be just a regular metallic. They can be metallic with floating glitters or something. But out of all of the palettes, I really enjoy the shimmers in this one. Next up is the palette I honestly ought to be ashamed of myself because I still have not used it. And I bought a backup of it, which is why I gave this palette out here, the Amrezy palette, as a gift as part of my 100 subscriber giveaway. I've already sent that package off in the post office. And so I really want to wait until she receives hers in order to do a tutorial on this one. Even if this palette doesn't receive the most votes, I think I'm gonna wanna go ahead and do a tutorial just to make sure that the giveaway winner have some form of reference of using this palette. And although it does have this glitter packaging here, I can take and just like rub my hands across it here and nothing here. I love the fact that this looks like chunky glitter and it looks like it would fall off all over the place, but so far I haven't had any. As you can see on the inside, ABH did switch things up a bit. Normally they would contain 14 shades, this one contains 16, and they've also added pressed glitters, which was a new formula. Many people didn't like the fact that they did that, but I'm someone who actually loves glitter, so I was willing to try it. Even though I haven't tried this formula yet, I'm really excited because to me, the mattes are just warm neutrals, which are the easiest to blend. And being able to just pop one of these lid shades on top and go seems like it'll be a simple look. But because of the color variety, it seems like it'll give you a lot of versatility because we have blues, purples, pinks, glitters, and this shade Gemini even looks like he may have slight of a green hue to it. So gonna wait until the giveaway winner gets hers and decide what to do with this one here. And for the last 7 palettes, these are all from the Norvina line. Although that is part of the ABH brand, they wanted to make this separately because they come in with a different packaging, different color stories, and it's something I appreciate. The only thing I didn't like is that for most of the larger palettes, they came out with a companion smaller palette. And just like with Pat McGrath, I don't feel as if all of the color stories lined up. So I had them aligned up to my liking because I paid for them and they're on my shelf. And so I'll show you how I have them lined up here. The first one, Norvina Volume 1. And as the packaging shows you, we can expect a lot of big, bright gold shades. These are the most expensive palettes as well as the largest palettes that ABH makes. They come with 25 colors here and they are $60. And when you hear $60, it's automatically like, girl, who got that kind of money? But when you see the pan size and the color variety, and when you think of paying $40-something for a 14 pan palette, to me, the value is there. But if you're not someone who likes colorful shadows, I can understand why you're like, no ma'am, I'm not doing that. This is the inside of Norvina Volume 1. As you can see, it has a variety of purple shades. You have mattes, you have shimmers, and then it's not just all purple. You have your pinks, you have some oranges and blues, and a black to help accentuate that. And I truly believe this was the best selling one just because purples always drive the fans crazy. And although purples aren't my absolute favorite, I did not want to be without this one, so this was probably the very first one that I grabbed. And this palette here paired with the Norvina Mini Volume 1, and because this one has the same name and the same color theory, I went ahead and lined these two up. This one is much smaller, and the smaller palettes did not sell nearly as well as the larger ones because once again, those were 25 very large pans for $60. These were half the price at $30, but you only got 9 pans and the pans were a lot smaller. So when people saw this small palette here for $30, everyone decided you could dupe most of these shades out in the larger one, and it just made more sense to go ahead and save up and get that larger palette. But because they were not completely different shades, they were complementary shades, I went ahead and made sure I got this one as well. And this is the Norvina Mini Volume 1. So if you want to see this palette, just go ahead and make sure you leave that comment. Next up is the Norvina Volume 2. And out of all of them, I think this is the one I was most excited to get. And as you can see, the reason why I was so happy to get this palette is because greens are my absolute favorite. And although this palette doesn't have the most greens in it, the fact that it had more than one type of blue and more than one type of yellow meant I can create my own custom greens. And it also had a matte black, which is one of my absolute favorites. So going in, I genuinely thought this was going to be my favorite palette, but it turns out this was actually my second favorite. And although that larger one was called the Norvina Volume 2, the mini palette that I pair it up with is the Mini Volume 3. I know the name does not match up, but when I think of that blue and yellow palette, it only made sense to pair it with this one here. And out of the minis, this one has the prettiest packaging here. And when I opened this up to see so much blue in this palette with that pop of green, it just made more sense to pair this up with the larger number 2. I didn't care about this being called number 3. I know what the name is, but on my shelf, this is going to always sit by number 2 just because of how much blue is in this palette. Of all of the larger palettes, this one easily has the prettiest packaging. That packaging is so stunning, and honestly, I wanted everything to be in removable pans, but had they have done so, I might have just taken all of my favorites and put them in just this one here. And of all of the larger palettes, this is the one I genuinely thought I was going to like the least, simply because of how many orange shades I saw, as well as that orange packaging. But after playing with it, this became my favorite. There's no doubt about it. Of all of the Norvina palettes, this one here just seems to do it for me. It gives me the greens that I love. I have the options for the yellows to accentuate it, but just like the other palettes, this gives me colorful looks. This has some peaches, this has some purples, this has some oranges, so I don't really necessarily need those other ones to get my color fix. And I was just completely shocked to find out that the one that I wanted the least was the one that I ended up liking the most. And I also even have a tutorial on this palette, so if you want to go ahead and see that, make sure you check that out right here. And the miniature palette that I paired this up with is the Norvina Mini Volume 2. Once again, I wanted to, whoop, just lost the plastic to that one. I wanted to pair them up based on color story and not just by name. When I see how many greens are in this palette and all of those accent colors of orange, yellow, and purple, to me it makes more sense to pair it up with the larger Volume 3, and I don't understand why they didn't switch up the names of these, because this looks just like the larger Volume 3 palette. And the last of my ABH palettes is the one I really had every intention on using. But when I ordered it, it was a really bad time to be having deliveries come through because things were being delayed and coming late all the time. And because I have this one here, which is the large Norvina Volume 4, which I believe is also the very last palette that ABH has put out, this one here is the one I've never used. And I hear everyone saying the same thing. This palette looks like a larger version of the original Norvina palette. And truth be told, I understand why y'all saying that. And it leads me to wonder if they're going to do a miniature palette like this. But when you look at it here, you can see she's like a larger version of the original Norvina palette or a softer version of the Norvina Volume 1 palette. But number 4, I have never used. I truly have every intention on doing so, but I just keep getting caught up. And I think out of all of them, this may be the most neutral of the 4. But you see, it still offers you the chance to go ahead, add some glam, add some colorful, as well as some glitter textures. So if you all want to see this palette viewed for the next tutorial, just go ahead and leave that comment down below. And that's it for my entire ABH collection. I really hope you all enjoyed this video. And as you can see, I'm someone who really loves to collect eyeshadow palettes, but this is showing me myself that I really need to spend more time in using what I actually have instead of purchasing new items. But I just really wanted to get more interaction going on with you all because just playing in my makeup brings me joy. But if for any reason you all had one of these palettes and need some inspiration, or was debating on one of these palettes and wanted to see if it was worthwhile, just make sure you leave a comment down below, because whichever one receives the most comments is the one that'll be the next tutorial. I think I'm gonna just cut my recording off today for this week to make sure that I get these 3 videos out. I'm gonna try to do this much more often so that way you all know exactly what I have in my collection and what to request. And with that being all for now, I hope you all remember to practice, continue to stay blessed, and until next time, goodbye, YouTube.